Welcome to BeerNet Radio. Listen to on every continent except Antarctica. BEER.NET.
Beer.
BeerNet Radio.
I'm good. How's the knee?
It's better now. I had a shot, cortisone, and it'll be better in a couple hours. It sucks. I'm not even drinking. It's like, how do I get gout? I did get back from Louisiana and New Orleans, so and Florida.
Couple crawdaddies.
I mean, there were oysters, there were crawfish, there was fried fish, fried shrimp, gumbo. I mean, it's amazing it took this long, honestly. I gotta ask you a question.
Sure.
What is the easiest way to have a good year in beer sales?
Distribution expansion.
That is correct. But what I was going for was the best way to have a good year this year is to have a shitty year last year. That's right. And when we look at Molson Coors, in today's issue, how great they're doing, one of our readers pointed out, yeah, it's because they didn't have any product last year. And he shared his sales numbers, and like last year's Ice House sales for July, 8 cases. This year, 3,000, So, I mean,
there were some goose eggs next to some of them too.
Right. Just zero. So obviously, just having beer to sell apparently is a great way to increase sales. That's good news for them. I mean, having no supply for those brands last summer, it's good to see that at least they came back.
That's what I was about to say is, I mean, at least there's still demand for it, because those are brands you would think of if they were out of stock. People would say, oh, well, I guess they just quit making those,
Yeah. And just switch over to, Busch Light or something.
And never think about them ever again.
Right. Habit is a powerful thing, Jordan. And if you're used to just going to the cold box and grabbing that same product every week, and then there's disruption in that, you build new habits, see? And then going back to the old habits can be tough. Habits. It's why brands exist. You have a habit of going to a brand that you trust. Maintaining habits is the goal here for a lot of these beer marketers. All right. Boy, cider's had its up and downs, but some people are doing pretty well in cider, Jordan. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. So I've heard.
Yeah. Why don't we talk to the good folks at Schilling Cider, see what they're up to? I'll let you introduce them and then get connected. Hello, gentlemen.
How's it going?
Good. How are you? I'm Harry Schuhmacher. Welcome to BeerNet Radio. These guys are with Schilling Cider, and we've got Jordan on the line too. And hey, thanks for being on our podcast.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. We're all about emerging brands here, and you guys have been kicking some ass lately. So we thought we'd ask you some questions.
Yeah, kicking ass for a while now.
Yeah.
So let me formally introduce y'all. Today on the show we have Schilling Cider founder Colin Schilling and the company's chief commercial officer Eric Phillips. For those of you who don't know, Schilling has become one of the fastest growing companies, not just in cider, but in beer, period. They grew 50% last year to 100,000 barrels and are projecting big growth again this year. But, beyond the growth, what fascinates me about y'all's company is how y'all are kind of showing how much more cider can be. I mean, that's evident with Excelsior, y'all's Imperial cider line, which clocks in like at 8% ABV. That's something I don't think anybody had seen or heard before. But also, for instance, Harry, when you think of peak cider selling season, what month do you think of?
December.
Okay. And how do you think cider performs over warmer spring, summer months?
Cider is meant to be consumed by a hearth and a fire. And you're talking about cold cider. I think is it seasonal? I don't really know.
Oh, okay. There we go. kind of, Colin and Eric, walk us through what y'all see over the year, because we talked just a while ago and I was kind of fascinated at the curve of sales. It's not really much of a curve, but kind of share us that trajectory.
Yeah, you want to take this one, big dog?
Go for it, Eric. You're the sales master.
All right, sounds good, man. Yeah, I think we've been pretty fortunate. I like to think that some of it's hard work and perseverance, but I think you got to catch a couple of breaks here and there. But one of the things that we found is that we just saw the article y'all had about athletic and the amount of fall placements, and we've been really fortunate, like I said, to have not had the same cyclical performance that a lot of people have, where you kind of, okay, it's slow at the beginning of the year and then you peak in the summer and then it definitely drops off like a bell curve, right? It's been really fun to watch over the last 5 years of, that fall reset season. We get a bunch of new PODs and expansion in the set, and then it actually takes us into the summer season where we get spring, and then we just keep going. One of the fun things that we've seen is a lot of people think, okay, well, cider, great, refreshing, very fruit forward, bold, innovative for the summer months. Yeah, we absolutely see it take off in a lot of stacks, but where we really win and I think surprise people is that OND category, because like Harry said, there's that association of, that warmth around the fireplace and that kind of thing with cider, whether it be warm cider or cold cider. We really see an increased performance and really acceleration through the end of the year.
It's like, the wine and spirits guys, they don't even work other than O&D. It's like, that's when they show up, and the beer guys, it's quite the opposite. So it is kind of nice to have a product that works in both seasons, because when Jordan asked me that question, I immediately assumed, cider's refreshing. It's a summer drink, but then I'm thinking of the old country, like, apple cider was such a, it was a winter drink to warm up your gut, if you will.
Totally. And one of the things, you bring up a good point. One of the things we're leaning into right now is we are working on a campaign, and I was talking with Jordan about this a bit ago, and we're working on a campaign because there are certain companies that own a drinking season or a drinking month or an occasion, right? Well, cider has never identified that in the same way. There's been some small campaigns and some hashtags here and there, but one of the things we're really working on, and I've talked with some of the people that I've gotten to know in the cider industry, of this idea of owning October and making that National Cider Month, because technically it is National Cider Month. And so how can we as a cider community own that month and watch that acceleration in OND, right? Because like you said, beer, wine, more wine and spirits, to your point, yeah, they just have stacks everywhere. There's no space for it, but there's an occasion in between the summer coming off. You've got your holidays, Memorial Day, Labor Day, and then you go into your seasonal beers where you have pumpkin and it's a flash in the pan and it comes out in July, right? Okay, right. Great. Cider can own a month. Cider can own a drinking occasion because there's already that association with the harvest season. There's already that association with apples and the fall, and kind of that, for lack of a better term, kind of that, like that emotional connection to Americana in that time of year. So that's what's exciting for us. And the goal long-term is to get everyone on the same page. It's not, hey, Schilling's going to own Cider Month. No, the cider category is going to own Cider Month. And we want to tell that across different regions with our other craft partners in the industry.
That's interesting because, Guinness owns St. Patrick's Day.
That's it.
Secchi's owns Cinco de Mayo. Bud Light owns the Super Bowl. And that is, nobody owns Oktoberfest, I guess, and Halloween.
But those beers are gone.
Yeah. I mean, that is, and that's all the chuggy basic white bitches are out there in their vests, their puffy vests and their boots going to pumpkin patches. I think it's a great time to push cider.
Yeah, totally. It's so in line with Schilling's ethos too, of being a collaborative partner in the industry in terms of building something that creates an all boats rise scenario. Back in the day, we were the first person to open a cider bar in the US that supported a bunch of other brands, not our own 32 tap handles. And now we have another one in Portland that holds the world record. So we have 50 taps of cider down there, and we support everybody else in the neighborhood, in the Northwest and beyond. So again, we want to educate consumers because we're very bullish on cider in the long term. And so we don't see those people as competition. We see them as our collaborative partners to help grow the whole industry and raise cider up, as it's still, as you guys know, such a small percentage of the overall.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Kind of jumping back to the summertime. Eric, when we talked, you were saying that y'all have already had 3 best months ever already this year. Is July shaping up to be another?
I think July is going to eke it out right at the end there. You got to look at the selling days when the holiday lands, and that's always the tricky part. But I think we'll eke it out, and then I think we're going to have 5 consecutive months of best month ever. I think August is really lining up to be pretty big for us. There's some good programming that's happening that our national accounts team has been working on. And then my goal is to see another best month ever in October and really own that as we tell that story to our HT grocery and our retail partners. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're going to eke out a 3rd or 4th straight here, which will be it's just always fun. And it's like, hey, it's okay if we don't. It's still so much better than it was a year ago. So I have to kind of make sure that the team has perspective. It's like, this is amazing. This isn't this isn't the norm. It's okay if we're just shy of best month ever. We still performed and hit our goals internally.
For sure.
And Jordan and Harry, you guys know it's been a tough year for the industry overall. And so we are just trying to do everything we can to be a spotlight for our distributors. Our goal is always to be the best partner we possibly can be for our distributors. And I know we've made them pretty happy at most of our distributors this year in terms of delivering well above, market performance. And we're excited to keep doing that. So like Eric said, if we can extend that kind of traditional summer peak into the fall, that's just another way we can deliver additional value for our distributors and be the best partner we can possibly be.
Right. I know y'all want to give some shout outs to some of your distributor partners. So I think this would be a perfect.
Yeah, always. I mean, I got to give it up to Jesse Ferber and Chris DeFonsi over at Columbia Distributing. They're still to this day, obviously our biggest home market distributor. And both those guys have done phenomenal things to help grow our brand, really believe in cider, not just build our brand, but build the category here in the Northwest to being the most potent and biggest, cider region in the country. And we couldn't have done it without those guys. So really appreciate them. And Eric's been working with our friends at Reyes and a number of other key distributors too. So I'll throw it over to him to give some shout outs as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Got to give shout out to our partners in Idaho, Montana at Hayden, our partners up in Alaska, RNDC, they just took over that business. And I mean, it's up 100%. It's wild. We're just like, okay, this is fantastic. People love cider up there. And then as Colin said, Reyes has been, Jessica Muskie, Cornell Barr, Ned Hall, Tim McGettigan have just believe in us, and we're like, okay, that's pretty cool just to be believed in by, Reyes. And I know, there's people who love him and there's people who might not, but I'm just thankful to be on their radar, and get that support from them.
If you can get their focus, it's a machine. So it does sound like that cider in general is kind of regional, right? In the Pac Northwest. I mean, is it regional, or am I right or wrong there?
I think you've got, from my perspective, you've obviously got Angry Orchard, which allowed other people to be in the category, quite frankly, right? And, we're always, we always tell that to everyone. I think that's an important part of the story. Jim and his team allowed for cider to exist in the way that it does, currently. And what we see is there's kind of a multi-regional approach that's going on. I think there's the Pacific Northwest. There's some key brands in Northern California. And then you kind of move over to the Midwest, and then you've got your East Coast business. And then, you've got some stuff in like Texas or Florida. There's some stuff, but that's kind of, probably 5 or 6 regions where you have some strong local players that are multi-state, and we're seeing a couple of those players be able to stretch into not only just one region, but maybe 2 or 3 and be able to build that, which has been, really, really exciting for us.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the brand behind you there, Eric, Excelsior, because first off, I think it's pretty cool the way y'all have gone about expanding that line. You've line extended, but it's not just adding a new flavor. Each extension is very different. So can you tell me the kind of the thinking behind doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want Colin to get in the nerdy part. So, I'll get in the quick stuff, but I'll let him nerd out because that's where he excels for sure. So the thing about Excelsior is, you look at a lot of brands and try to have brand extensions based off of something that's been successful. The question I think that we had to ask ourselves is why, right? What is the value proposition? What is the excitement level? What is the consumer gaining from another Excelsior? Right. And we really had to lean into that and think, okay, is someone excited to pay the premium price because we have premium quality, ingredients for just something else? Well, I don't think so. Right. So I want to think it's like, what would I want to buy? Right. And so the way that we designed it is everything is different enough that you're actually gaining something, a different drinking experience or opportunity, right? So Excelsior OG is the staple. It's 8.5%. And then we released the second line extension in that one, which is Mango. And that we said, okay, well, if you like 8.5, let's go to 9.1. Let's like really move the needle, right? Like, let's make it worth your time, right? To make this happen. And we're also looking at, trends and premiumization. People are drinking less, but they're drinking better. Right, they're improving what they're drinking upon, and especially for us and the people that we consider, the Schilling fans, and based on our data that we've gathered, that's what they're looking for. And then the one behind me, I'm actually going to kick it over to Colin for this one because I know he gets excited. I'll just say this is our favorite release. Right. I'll speak for you. This is our favorite release, and we're excited to introduce this to people so they can be as excited as we are about Red Glow, which is behind me here.
Yeah, so Imperial Red Glow has a couple cool things. It's actually made with red flesh apples. So if you cut the apple open, it's about 3/4 red inside. And that is a tradition in Europe, especially to make cider out of those red apples. They're really hard to get. We bought up about half the crop last year and had it pressed and frozen for us. So we pull it from frozen when we need it. But it's really cool. And then we have some proprietary technology in our manufacturing side. It's actually the highest carbonated cider in a can. So basically, to take anything in a can and get it over a certain level, you already need a certain set of equipment. But then because cider also has to be pasteurized, you have another set of equipment you need, and all that has to be perfectly fine-tuned to get it up to this level. So the carbonation on this is almost twice as much as most of our ciders. So when you crack that can open, if you poured this thing out into a champagne flute, you can't tell the difference in the way that the bubbles cascade out. It's a beautiful cider, and we're actually extending that technology into a couple new ciders this year. Over at Schilling, we never take the easy route. We always make it way harder than it should be, but that's what I believe is what really sets us apart long-term. And the other thing with Imperial ciders is if you just take regular apple juice and you ferment it all the way dry, you get about 7% alcohol. So anytime you see a cider over 7%, you have to ask, well, how did they do that? How did they get that extra fermentable sugar to get up to that level of ABV? In beer, it's relatively obvious, right? You're adding more grain to that boil, which equals more fermentable sugar. But in cider, you can't just go out and find higher juice apples. I mean, there are some, but not in any kind of scale. And so for us, we're actually working directly with farmers in France, and we're bringing over bitter sharp concentrate from France that we add to fresh pressed juice from the Northwest. And so that's how we're taking, something that would ferment out to 7%. We're adding more sugar in the most authentic way possible, which is by bringing over heirloom cider apples from France, where they grow this in volume at a commercial scale, which they don't in the US. And that allows us to get up to 8-9% alcohol in an authentic way. So if you look at the way it's more traditionally done in the US, it's from some other cheaper type of sugar that's not adding an apple character in some way. So we're doing it in a very high-end traditional way. And that's what makes the entire Excelsior line so unique and has so much staying power, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, Colin, you could just dump some donuts into them mash,
That would probably sell better. I mean, you're going to trademark that though, right?
Going to France and getting these special apples, there's a much easier way. You just dump sugar in there.
You're telling me about it. But that's what everybody else does, and we want to make it hard,
No, I tease, but that's really cool. And it is the liquid. Does it have a tint to it, or is it? Does it look like regular cider?
It's darker for sure. So this juice is much higher in tannin content. You talk about tannins a lot in wine. There's actually a lot of tannins in cider apple specifically. There's a lot less tannins in your traditional eating apple like you'd buy at a grocery store. And so Excelsior, for example, is a very dark cider. And it has some kind of very unique characteristics to it that are much more akin to kind of a high quality import cider from France. And that's one of the reasons why we're so bullish on Excelsior long-term, because it's a very expensive way of doing it. It's a very difficult way of doing it, especially with current supply chains. And so we continue to lean into Excelsior OG as our number one push, because we know it's the best imperial cider on the market in the US. And we believe that because we know how we make it and we know how authentic it is. And we think that, beverage trends that come and go generally lack authenticity. And I'm not calling anybody out here, but you've seen things come and you've seen them disappear very, very quickly. Cider has a very long history in the US, and we believe that if we want to extend that, you need to do it as authentically as possible. And that's exactly what Excelsior OG is, and all the line extensions that we've done with Excelsior. So we believe it's a long-term strategy, and we're very much a long-term outlook company in everything that we do.
Yeah, it's funny because I had a follow-up question where I was gonna, refer back to several years ago with the rosé cider craze, and how pretty much all the big players ran with that in no time. And I was going to ask, why why haven't we seen that with imperial ciders? But I think you just explained that pretty well right there.
Very hard to do authentically. Like I said, with Imperial Red Glow, it is technically a rosé cider, but we don't call it that because that brand has been so degraded from that trend, because most of those were colored with not red flesh apples. Let's be honest, right? So much like a rosé wine, that's actually
red food coloring number 9.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't say that.
I did. I could say whatever I want.
Yeah.
And by the way, I know you guys are running up against the end of July, and you might be short of your greatest month ever goal. When I do that, like with our subscriptions, I just buy them myself. So if we're 10 short, I'll just buy them. I have like 30 subscriptions to Beer Business Daily right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. License.
Yeah, I have a site license.
Do you give yourself a discount too, though?
No, I pay full price.
One thing I think also that's lost on people is, when we look at data, cider is classified as beer, most of the time in sales data. But when you think about the TTB, cider is regulated like wine. And I know that makes things a bit difficult. Can you share some of the challenges y'all have kind of gone through over the years and being classified more as wine than beer?
Yeah, I'll take the crack at that one because I've done many, many things in this realm. So cider historically has always fallen in this no man's land, and that goes all the way back to Prohibition and the way it's been classified post-Prohibition as well. And so we fall in the strange category of sometimes being wine and sometimes not, and sometimes being other. And so traditionally, once you crossed 7% alcohol, that's when a different set of regulations kicked in. Under 7%, even to this day, cider is still actually primarily regulated by the FDA. So we need nutrition fact panels. We don't need colas. There's a whole bunch of other regulations. But as soon as you cross that point over 7%, then all the wine laws kick in. Sometimes there's a caveat there. And so that's originally why Excelsior was actually in a 375 ml can, which cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in changeover parts to add 2 mils to the size of the can, because it was a standard of fill. So it followed wine law. We have helped change that law since, which has allowed us to put it in the 12-ounce can. But for example, you cannot buy Excelsior in a 16 or a 19.2. We would, of course, love to do that, but it is not a federally recognized standard of fill yet. Then you get into state law. For the longest time, there were certain states that didn't recognize a cider type product between 7 and 8.5%. So you literally couldn't sell it in that state. Most of those states have been cleared up since. You also fall into tax law. So once you cross over 7 or 8.5 or other somewhat arbitrary numbers of ABV in different states, your taxes can go from 20 or 30 cents a gallon to $2 or $3 a gallon. So you have these wild fluctuations in tax. Then there's a carbonation tax. So if you go over a certain level of carbonation with or without fruit, those are 2 different tax categories. And those have multiples. I mean, I'm talking, in some cases, 20 cents a gallon to $3.50 a gallon could be the delta in tax. So there are all these wild intricacies.
I have never heard that before. You learn something new every day. There is a carbonation tax.
There's a carbonation tax that applies to cider, and it applies at a different threshold based on if there is fruit or only apple and pear in that cider.
I mean, leave it to the government. It is a Byzantine labyrinth, and cider, like you said, it's not even classified in some areas. And I know that it doesn't have franchise laws in most states, I guess, or it's different in most states. I
It's
know
a roll
Texas,
the dice. Yeah.
you can kind of roll it. I think here in Texas, you can move without even calling your distributor, probably. But
If you can get a contract that's also okay with that signed with your distributor.
right.
That's a different conversation. But going back to those taxes, it's interesting for us from an innovation standpoint, right? Because we love to push the boundaries on what we do. And I feel like we've created new categories within the industry, imperial cider being the most obvious of that. But there's lots of other fruit ciders where we push the boundaries as well. And so not only do we have to say, what ingredients can we source, what tastes great, what are consumers going to want, but then you have these whole other layers built into our innovation around what's legal, what can we afford to pay the tax on, what can we ship over state lines, given the tax in this state. So it does make, not to say that anyone else's job in any other industry is easy either, but I do feel like cider has some unique complexities that make innovation and make R&D especially challenging for cider.
Hey, it's a barrier to entry. Look at it that way. Keeps all the barbarians out of it.
Right. That's a fair point.
Yeah, I was going to say, has there ever been an instance where kind of being in this no man's land has made things easier?
I would say with Excelsior OG, like I mentioned, we originally put it in that 375 ml can. It's a challenging can to get. It was hard to get the parts to have the line run it. It was a big investment. So we were first to market with a 6-pack of any imperial cider for a long time. And that allowed us to kind of prove the category and obviously put up some pretty big growth numbers with Excelsior leading the way. Since that law has changed, you're now seeing a flood of ciders in that space, which, again, all boats rise. We do believe in that mentality, but that's an example of what you're asking about. It did allow us to get out front and really prove the category, but it was also a huge roll of the dice. It was very expensive. No one knew if it was going to work or not. And like I said, we did it the hard way. We made this cider in a super authentic way. And we did all that out of the gate. So it was a big risk and it's obviously paid off, but you never know if these risks are going to pay off, like buying those 30 extra subscriptions to hit your numbers.
Oh, it pays off. It pays off. Yeah. Well, excuse my ignorance, but are y'all nationwide, or how many markets are y'all in?
So yeah, we're in about 20 states, and we're making sure that the states that we're in, we can support well. It's never really been a goal of ours to be national, because it's going to be prohibitive for our scalability to ship something across the nation and sell it at the price that we need to sell it to make sure that we make the money on it. And we would rather provide, growth opportunities and good solid salaries for the crew that we have here, and be in fewer states and be able to go deeper in those states. So we do most of our business in X number of states, but we are in very strategic states where we have long-term growth opportunities.
I'm telling cider is just as heavy as beer, last I checked, and I know that beer is heavy, and it's hard to move. That's true. People being nationwide it's not all that fun if you only have one facility in one area, especially if it's on a coast. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shipping has gone up exponentially over the last 2 years, and we're not the only ones feeling that, of course. But to your point about a second facility, East Coast is a huge cider market. But the problem is our particular cider brand is based around fresh pressed juice at its core. And that fresh pressed juice is the best and the most, scalable in the Pacific Northwest, in Washington specifically. And, even if you ship fresh juice and ferment it elsewhere, you're shipping a tanker truck of juice. Well, you can fit about the equivalent amount of cans in a semi-truck full of cans. So there's really no cost savings to ferment anything elsewhere if you're a fresh pressed juiced cidery that is purchasing that juice, from a commercial operation. So we couldn't really put a facility on the East Coast even if we wanted to. So we're just waiting for those electric trucks to come online and see those freight prices come down 90%.
Like a Rivian or
yeah.
They were rolling them down hills.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So you would have to ship the fresh pressed juice from the West Coast to the East Coast, can it, and then ship it back to the West Coast if you're nationwide. And I could see that would be prohibitive.
There are apple growing regions, in the Midwest and, in upstate New York and there are big cider makers out there that do that, but it's not the same breadth as we have in Washington. Washington is the #1 grower of apples in the country. And in my opinion, it's the best place to do fresh press based cider. We're obviously friendly with a lot of other cider companies, and I know an enormous amount of cider companies in states pretty far away, and they do tanker truck juice from Washington State, all the way across. It still makes sense. It's still the highest quality, and it's still the most affordable way to do it.
Right. Do y'all ever get sick of apples?
I mean, I've always been a consumer of all types of beverage, if I'm being honest about it. And interestingly enough, some of the recent, data work we've done have showed that the cider consumer on average is not a cider only consumer. And you've probably seen that in other beverages as well. But I enjoy craft beer. I enjoy cocktails. My favorite spirit is gin. And also cider is amazingly mixable as well. So if you can't decide, you might as well, do a little bit of both.
I love cider. It's kind of, in the US, it's never been that as big as it was in Europe, but hey, that doesn't mean it can't be.
Well, not since the 1800s.
Yeah, right. And
you go back long enough, it was the number one drink in the country.
There's no gluten in it.
Right.
Yeah. Back in the old days, they loved that shit. And then something happened, the whiskey rebellion or something. I don't know.
And prohibition. There was actually a law. There was a law that you couldn't have apple trees on your property that would produce more than, I think, 100 gallons of juice per year, because everyone that grew apples back then was fermenting it. No one actually ate apples pre-prohibition. It was 100% for cider, hard cider. And so they were all cut down. That was really the problem.
Right. And it takes probably a few years to get a harvest up.
Exactly.
Whereas, grain you can grow every year.
Right.
Interesting. All right. Sorry, I'm hogging the mic. Jordan, you want to take it home?
No, I think that was a great conversation. We try to keep it at 30 minutes. So I'll give the last word to y'all on anything y'all want to ask or
give us a message of hope.
Well, I got one. I think it's maybe a message of hope. I was just going to try and kind of coordinate what kind of swim trunks, Harry, we're going to wear to breakers. So I just want to make sure that I was going to be on point.
I have my SpongeBob SquarePants swim trunks that I break out every year.
Okay.
And I just got back from the breakers because I do a site check.
Sure.
It's like a 200-year-old hotel, but you never know. They might make drastic changes, and I need to know that. It's the same, by the way. It's the same. It took me 4 days to figure out, but it's the same. And we're looking forward to it. January 8th, we can do a quick plug at the Breakers, and I'm telling you, that Breakers is nice. I don't care what anybody says. It is so nice. Just they don't like you to smoke cigars out on the patio. Apparently it's an old wooden hotel. So I learned my lesson.
The Breakers?
Oh no, that was the Dell. Was it well, yeah.
That one's also wood.
Yeah, they're all we only have our conferences in ancient wooden hotels.
Perfect. I love it. Yeah, I would say, if people who are listening and they say, well, I've tried cider and I don't like cider, ask yourself when the last time you tried cider was and what cider it was, and that's not knocking any brands. I think that there's been a lot of evolution within the cider category, especially in the last 3 to 4 years. And I think you're going to find that there's a lot of really impressive stuff out there, and if it's, sure, try Schilling, that's great, but try something that you've never tried before. And I think you're going to be wildly impressed with the quality and the consistency and, the innovation that people have out there. I mean, it's a different category than when we first started, so I think that's the thing that always gets me is, when people come by, they go, well, I kind of like cider. It's like, okay, have you tried it recently? And they go, well, no. It's like, okay, well, this is free booze. Like, try it. We're doing a tasting here.
I had a woodchuck back in '96.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's my point. So I think that's the fun thing for us is there's just so much continued opportunity because there's so many people who haven't tried it recently and, are just getting introduced to it. So that's the fun thing for us.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it. If we don't see you soon, we'll definitely see you in Palm Beach in January.
Thank you both for having us. Really appreciate all the coverage you guys give to the industry and the way you do it. Super helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's great. Look forward to seeing you guys. And you know what? I'm going to go get me a cider this afternoon. You guys have inspired me. I might have 2 or 3.
Love it.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Y'all take care.
Thanks so much. Bye.